Hi, I'm Nicole from Baby to Sleep, and today I'm going to talk to you about naps and nap transitions. Okay, so things tend to be very unpredictable in the first few months of a baby's life. They tend to not necessarily be awake for very long between sleeps. It could be half an hour, it could be 40 minutes, and there is absolutely no predictability as to how long they will sleep for. This is entirely normal and it's okay. Okay, there is absolutely nothing that is there to help them suddenly start sleeping in any kind of structure. Okay, what tends to happen is around 4 months, sleep starts to change. So what you might want to do if you've got a little one that's pre 4 months, if you want to get a bit of an idea as to what's about to change, you might find watching the video or reading the blog on the 4-month sleep regression really helpful, because it's going to explain a little bit about what happens with the brain and sleep cycles between 4 and 6 months. So because that's when the sleep starts to consolidate. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about that now. That's over on the other video. So what it might be worth doing is subscribing up to the YouTube channel, so you've got access to all the videos in one place, and signing up to the newsletter, because then you can get updated videos sent through to your email as well. Okay, so between 4 and 6 months, sleep cycles start to form and sleep starts to consolidate. So you might have had a cat napper, and that's absolutely fine. And then suddenly they start taking some longer naps. And again, this is entirely normal. So between 5 and 6 months, what you tend to find is they start to fall into a bit more of a structured sleep. So I must stress, and this is for all I'm about to talk to you about with regards to naps and everything, they are a guide. This is not something to stress you out. This is something that I've put together to help you. Okay, so if your little one's sleep is a little bit all over the place, this might just kind of give you a bit more of an idea as to why it might not be quite where you want it to be, and it might give you some tips on how you can look at improving things. So please do not take this as this is exactly how much sleep a baby of a certain age needs throughout the day. These are the times that they need to nap, because that is not how it is. Every baby is different. They are all entirely unique. This is a guide, and it will just give you some kind of ideas of what to look for, and how you might look to structure sleep a little bit. And it'll help you start to understand why things are starting to happen when they do, and how you can help them transition. Okay. So around 5 to 6 months, they tend to start sitting on around 3 naps a day. Now these 3 naps a day, we're looking at a total amount of sleep of about 3.5 hours. And you might go, what? It's a lot of sleep. But yes, we're looking at around 3.5 hours. Every baby's different. Some might take a bit more, some might take a bit less. But then we're looking at around, again, an average of 11 hours overnight. So around 14.5 hours sleep in a 24-hour period is kind of average. Some take a bit more, some take a bit less, but generally there is only so much sleep a baby can take within 24 hours. So if your nights are shorter and your days are longer, if you're wanting to put some of that in a day sleep into the night, you can start to shift and play around with it a little bit. Okay, but you might be quite happy with how it is, and that's absolutely fine. So this is just an idea. So we tend to be looking at around 3.5 hours over the day. This could split over 3 naps, and you tend to find it works quite nicely if your first 2 naps can be the chunkier naps. Okay, and it could be an hour and a half each with a half an hour cat nap in the afternoon. It could be an hour in the morning, 2 hours at lunch, and then sort of half an hour in the afternoon to get you through to bedtime. They work really quite nicely. Obviously, your baby isn't reading a manual. Your baby doesn't know how long they're supposed to sleep for. This is just to give you some kind of ideas. They'll do something completely different most likely, and that's absolutely fine. Again, it's just what you want to think about is not having that big, heavy, chunky sleep first thing in the morning and skimpy naps throughout the rest of the day, because that potentially will have some kind of knock-on effect at night. And again, shorter sleeps in the first part of the day with a big sleep in the afternoon, late afternoon, that's also going to start playing havoc at some point. So again, it's just trying to structure things a little bit for you throughout the day. It could be that they're all of the equal length, and again, that's absolutely fine as well. The reason though I'm saying it works quite nice if you can have the 2 chunky naps though over the first 2 is between 8 and 9 months, your baby will start to transition to 2 naps. And this might happen because they just point blank refuse that 3rd nap. And that's absolutely fine. It's totally and utterly normal, but that might be when you need to start using that early to bed. And don't be afraid of the early to beds. There is a video that we've put together as well on sleeping through the night that might help explain why early to beds are very, very helpful. So you might want to watch that as well. But yes, so take advantage of early to beds and catching up on sleep when they start to miss that 3rd nap. But if you're finding that you get 2 skimpy naps and the big nap's a 3rd nap and that's not happening, that's going to start causing you some big problems. So to give you a bit of an idea of structure, say sort of 6-7 month olds, you tend to find they might do 90 minutes awake, maybe 2 hours between waking up and going down for their first nap. Between nap 1 and nap 2, they might do 2 hours to 2 hours 15 awake. Between nap 2 and nap 3, they might be able to do about 2.5. And then between nap 3 and bedtime, you're looking at 2.5, 3 hours at your top end. Really between 3rd nap and bedtime. I wouldn't be pushing past 3 months at that age. Now, again, between 8 and 9 months, they start to drop this 3rd nap. So you might find you need to start doing some early to beds on the days it's not there. And that might also mean that the other day it is there. So you'll have some days where your 3rd nap's there, some days that it's not. Totally normal, don't panic. What you might then start doing is trying to tweak things a little bit. So you might start trying to gradually extend that wake window from waking up in the morning and going down for that first nap. And again, extending that window a little bit between nap 1 and nap 2, and extending that gap again between nap 2 and and bedtime. Again, you don't want to push it too much. So generally between 9 and 12 months, they sit quite comfortably on around 3 hours a day. So again, it's not a huge drop from what they were on at 6 months old. It's just the fact that they start being able to be awake for longer between them sleeps. So what we're wanting to do is then wake up in the morning, build up enough sleep pressure to be able to go down for a nap. Okay, so it's making sure that they build up enough sleep pressure, but not that they're awake for too long that they go past it and they're basically like an overboiling kettle going absolutely nuts on the stove. So we're wanting to get them down when they're tired. So again, between 9 and 12 months, you might be looking at nap 1 being around 2.5 hours after waking, maybe 3 at a push, depending on how well they're sleeping overnight. And you might find closer to 12 months, they might be closer to that 3 hour point. You tend to find 3 hours between nap 1 and nap 2 works quite nicely. And again, anything between 3 and 4 hours between nap 2 and bedtime works quite nice. And again, I wouldn't be going over that sort of 4 hour point either between the last nap and bedtime. And again, when they get to 12 months, the day sleeps drops ever so slightly, again to around 2.5 hours over the day, but they're still on 2 naps. And I'm saying this because a lot of people tend to think that their baby's ready to drop to just 1 nap when they get to 12 months because they start to refuse the afternoon nap. I can promise you now, the chances are your baby is not ready to drop to 1 nap. Okay, they're just going through this standard development, which they all go through, and it just takes a bit of tweaking and getting through it, and a bit of early to beds and things like that, and just getting back on track. So you tend to find those naps, just overall day sleep is a little bit less, still 2 naps, and between 15 and 18 months, they start transitioning to 1 nap. And it's really important I'm saying this to you because you'll tend to find, and I'm going to do a different video on this as well, on starting nurseries, you'll tend to find a lot of nurseries try and push the 1 nap before your baby is ready. So it's really important for you to have that knowledge as to when your baby is probably most likely ready to start trying to transition. And again, it's not an overnight transition. This is one that takes time. So what you'll start to find happens is they start refusing the afternoon nap. They go down like a dream in the morning and they start refusing the afternoon nap. If it's just the odd day, don't worry about it. But if it's been happening for a few days, then you need to start tweaking things. So what you'll probably start doing then is start capping the morning nap in the morning. So you might put a cap of say 10 o'clock in the morning as when they're to be awake for that nap. So they've got that 3 hours awake between waking up from nap 1 and nap 2 to go down for that nap. So they're more than likely ready for that second nap. Okay, and again, this helps them start trying to take a longer afternoon nap because you're cutting the morning nap shorter and they're having a longer afternoon nap. This is all in the ideal world. The reason I'm saying this though is by the time they're on one nap a day, we want it to be around 2.5 hours in one big chunk. And that's not something that's suddenly just going to overnight start doing, because if they're used to doing an hour and 15 minutes, maybe an hour and a half naps, this is asking them to do a lot to suddenly have a 2.5 hour chunk. So again, we're gradually giving them that chance to get used to sleeping for longer periods of time by not, and also not having them get massively overtired because we've stretched them so much, you know, by letting them have a big sleep in the morning and they're having to go right the way through to bedtime with no afternoon nap because they fought it. Either that or they've crashed at 4 o'clock and then you've got your fight on your hands at bedtime. So it's tweaking the morning nap so they're not good. So as awful as it sounds, having to wake a sleeping baby, trust me, I know, I'm living it right now. Waking them at about 10 o'clock in the morning. This is if you're talking around a 7 o'clock bedtime-ish, by the way. So they might go down 9 till 10, or they might even just do 9:15 till 10, but put your cap of 10 o'clock on. So that way you've got a nice 3 hours before the second nap, and that gives you till sort of 3 o'clock that they can still sleep till. And that will still comfortably get you to a 7 o'clock bedtime, okay? Again, those windows between sleep start to extend in the afternoon. So what you'll start finding happens is you might occasionally need to do a little bit of a later bedtime, but again, I wouldn't push it too far because that's going to cause you problems. But what you'll find starts to happen is you'll keep having to cut that morning nap down bit by bit till you're sort of sitting at around half an hour maybe in the morning, 20 minutes sometimes depending on the baby. So 20 minutes, half an hour, cap it at that. And then again, and obviously if the nap is shorter in the morning, they're not going to manage 3 hours awake. So again, that's going to give you a chance to start creeping that second nap a bit earlier and a bit earlier. So it starts to sit maybe closer to sort of 12, half 12 in the afternoon, rather than sitting closer to 1 o'clock. And again, if they're taking say 12 till 2 or 12:30 till 2:30, that's then giving you 4.5 hours or so, maybe even 5 hours for them to build up enough sleep pressure to go to bed at bedtime, but they've actually still had their quota of sleep for the day and it's good. Then what will probably start to happen is they'll start to refuse that morning nap. And that's when you kind of go, oh, now what do I do? Because that's put me on a pickle, because they're not going to get from waking up in the morning to this lunchtime nap that they've been having. So that's when you need to do a big shift the other way. So it might be if they've been going down for their nap in the morning about 9, 9:30 in the morning, they're not suddenly going to get through till 12 o'clock for a nap. So you might find that that big nap that they're getting used to doing needs to sit at around 10:30, 11 o'clock, because they're not going to get any later than that, okay, because they can't. So we might start them at 10:30 maybe, and we'll hope for a nice big chunky nap. And it might just mean that we have to do an early to bed that day. And then what we'll start finding happens is we start trying to push them bit by bit. And again, try not to do really big chunks. If you do a really big push, it's going to cause you some problems because your baby's going to go down really overtired and they're going to really fight you at this point. So we want to start getting them down when they're tired. So what you'll start doing is gradually moving it until we're sitting around 11:30 till 2 o'clock for a nap. Okay, obviously this is an awkward one because we sit there going, but this is lunchtime. You can do split lunches, or you can do, a main lunch before dinner. A lot of nurseries tend to do lunch at around 11 o'clock and then snacks in the afternoon. And that's really not a problem at all. That tends to work quite well. And then if you want to have your lunch in peace and quiet, then you can as well. So that tends to be how you work through to the transition. And now with regards to what happens then, so we're looking at around 2.5 hours. This is between 15 and 18 months this starts to happen. And like I say, it's not an overnight fix. And even when they have a 1-day nap, You might still need some days where they have 2 naps. So you might still try for that morning nap in the morning. And if it doesn't happen, you go for the big one nap. It might be a bit earlier, and it's just about tweaking things until you're sitting on it quite nicely. So what tends to happen then when they get to around 2 years old, guess what? They only drop down to about 2 hours a day, which again, people normally are quite shocked by, because they're thinking they probably only need an hour. They're still needing around 2 hours at 2 years old. And as the older they get, the less sleep that they actually need. But the average age to drop the nap completely is about 3.5 years old. And it's really important that I say this, because again, what tends to happen when your baby hits 2 is you'll go through a huge leap where they decide that they're not going to nap anymore. It's not that they don't need the nap, it's actually very much a developmental thing, and it is very, very common. You keep offering the nap, it tends to come back, okay? And that's really important to be aware of. 3.5 is the average age that they tend to drop the nap, and it might be by 3 they might only be on half an hour, and it might be that half an hour might only be every other day until there is no nap. And you might again go back into the early to beds while you're going through that transition of having some nap to no nap. So some days there may be a nap, some days there may not, and that's again absolutely normal. And a really good thing you can do with that is quiet time. So I hope you found this helpful. That's like a huge big session on naps right the way through, and talking about how to transition right the way through. I hope you found it helpful. Feel free to write any comments. Tell me if you found it helpful. It's really, really great to get feedback. I've got loads of videos coming up as well, and there's loads already on the YouTube channel, so subscribe to the YouTube channel, get access to all the new videos that are going to be coming your way. Sign up to the Baby to Sleep Village Facebook group, where you can join a community of parents that are going through the similar sorts of things of yourself, or have already been there and come out the other side, that can support you as well. And sign up to the newsletter, and you can read more on the blog at babytosleep.co.uk. And I will see you soon for another video. Bye.